everybody. So today we're going to be learning about two-place decimals. So far we've learned that when I take a square and divide it up into 10 segments, each of those segments or each of those pieces is known as 1/10. And we write 1/10 as 1 over 10 or 0.1. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a box, and you can see this on the bottom, and I'm going to divide it up into 100 pieces. So this is like I take one whole and I divide that whole up into 100 pieces. And one of those pieces is known as 1/100th or 1 over 100th. 1 over 100, and as a decimal, 0.01. When I say these types of decimals, there are two ways I can say them. So for this first decimal, I could say that as 0.01, or I could say it as 1/100th. So I want you to take a minute and think, how do you think you would say the next two decimals? So you would say the first one as 0.04 or 4/100ths. Notice that there's a 0 in that first spot. That means there's no tenths, so it is just 4/100ths. Now in the next one, you could say that 0.37 or 37/100ths. And you might notice that there is a 3 in the tenths place and a 7 in the hundredths place. And if we put 3/10ths and 7/100ths together, we're going to get 37/100ths. So that's why you would say that as 37/100ths. Now, if I wrote this, if I had 16/100ths and I wanted to write that out, I would write that as 0.16 or 0.16. So take a minute and think, how do you think you would write 84/100ths? And if you were thinking 0.84, you would be correct. So here I have a 100 grid, so it's one square divided up into 100 boxes. And what I did was I shaded just one column, which represents 1/10 because there are 10 columns in this picture. And if I shade one whole column in, or 1/10, and I ask myself how many hundredths are in that 1/10, you can count very quickly and see that there are 10. So in 1/10, I have 10 hundredths. So in this image, I shaded in 6/10ths or 6 columns. How many hundredths do you think are in there? How many little squares are there in 6/10ths? If you were thinking 60, you're right. In this picture, I shaded in 10/10ths or 10 columns, or the entire thing. So now I'm thinking, how many hundredths are there in 10/10ths? And if you're thinking 100, you're right. So here I have a place value chart. And in the ones column, you'll notice that I have 3 ones. In the tenths, I have 1/10. And in the hundredths, I have 2 hundredths. So that addition sentence, if I wanted to put those amounts together to get a number, would be 3 ones plus 1/10 plus 2 hundredths. And the way I would write that is 3, because 3 ones is just 3, plus 0.1, because that's what 1/10 is, plus 0.02, because that's what 2 hundredths is. And when I put all those together, I get 3.12. I also could say that 3 and 12 hundredths. So I want you to look at this image and think, how would you write a decimal for this image? What would the decimal be if I put those together? Okay, and the answer is 3 hundredths, because I have 3 circles. Each of them is 1/100th. If I put that together, it would be 0.03 or 3 hundredths. Okay, what about this one? So the answer here is 5 hundredths or 0.05. If I put those all together, I would get 0.05 or 5 hundredths. All right, I got a lot now. How do you think I would write this as a decimal? So this one gets a little bit trickier because there are 12 of them. So I need to think to myself, how could I write 12 hundredths as a decimal? And the answer would be 0.12. And the reason is that in 12 hundredths, 10 of them can go together and make 1/10. And that's why you see a 1 in the tenths place. And then I have those 2 left over, and that's why you see a 2 in the hundredths. Altogether, 12 hundredths or 0.12. Now I want you to try to think how you would write this number. Notice I have 2 ones, 4 tenths, and 3 hundredths. So how could I put that together? What decimal would I get? Okay, so I'm going to put together the 2 plus 0.4, which is the 4 tenths, plus 0.02, which is the 2 hundredths. And that altogether makes 2.42, or 2 and 42 hundredths would be another way to say it. Okay, give this one a try. There's something a little different about this. So you may have noticed that I have some ones and I have some hundredths, but I have nothing in the tenths place. So when I go to write this, I have 4 wholes and I'm adding that to 4 hundredths, but I have no tenths. So when I write the answer, it's 4.04 or 4 and 4 hundredths. Remember, you have to put that 0 in the tenths place. If you don't, it'll be a different number. So 4.04 would be the answer here. So up at the top, I have a number, 234.56 or 0.56, and I'm thinking about what does each number or what does each digit represent? So the first couple are easy because we've done this before with whole numbers. So the 2 represents 200 because it's in the hundreds place. The 3 represents 30 because it's in the tens place. And the 4 represents 4 because it's in the ones place. The 5 in this case is after the decimal. That's the tenths place. So that 5 represents 5/10 or 0.5. And the 6 is in the hundredths place. So that represents 0.06. Keeping that in mind, I want you to try this one. What does each digit represent in this number? Okay, so the 3 is the hundreds place. That represents 300. The 4 is in the tens place, so that represents 40. The 7 is in the ones place, so that just represents 7. The 9 is in the tenths place, so we would write that as 0.9. And then the 2 is in the hundredths place, so that would be 0.02. For your independent work today, you're going to complete page 19 and 20 in your math workbook. You can try page 21 as a challenge. I'll post the answer key to all 3 pages tomorrow, but 21 is a challenge, so you can try it, but 19 and 20 you need to do. Good luck!